She is. She said
Okay. I had to go back and look at the.
5 minutes ago. She said, "Don't feel like you need to wait for me," so
Oh.
we won't.
Okay.
All right, so I'll go ahead and call the meeting of the Energy Committee. This is February 4th, and it is 4:32. With us today, we have National Grid as well as our regular crew of the Energy Committee, Eloise, Amy, and myself. Just a quick reminder, the sign's over there, but you are being filmed, you are being recorded, so anything you say can and will be used on YouTube. So,
Forever and ever.
that's right, so bear that in mind, that it is truly a public meeting and it is being recorded. So with that, let's go ahead and talk to our minutes. Did you get a chance to look at these at all?
Yeah, I read the.
Any revisions necessary?
I didn't see any.
I'd entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes of January 7th, 2025.
Second.
All those in favor of accepting the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, carries unanimously. Meetings are accepted. Minutes are accepted. Okay, I'm just going to take a quick thing and talk about Colonial Grid. We were just talking, or Colonial Power. This is our municipal aggregation, because we were talking about it before the camera started and whatnot. I figured I'd let these guys up. So Kristen, our TA, met with Colonial Power, and they walked her through several of the guidance that has been issued by DOER about the uses of our adder funds. We've accrued quite a lot of money, about $180,000 over the time, so it's starting to get to a significant sum, and we need to decide what to do with it. In two past meetings,
What is that money accrued from? I'm sorry.
it's from the municipal aggregation program. We're allowed to put like a 2 mil per kilowatt hour.
So it's not
onto it.
solar credits, it's something else.
No, it's
Okay.
actually, it's kind of like the bill credits the National Grid would pay up for renewable energy.
Yeah.
So the way that it works is that based off of the savings that we provide to the customer through the competitive bid, we take a portion of it. And
I see.
And the use for that, as Amanda and I were talking about earlier, was originally started off being quite broad and legal, and DOER significantly narrowed it. So what it boils down to is what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. But if you are originally the guidance we were given by Colonial Power was that if you're targeting salaries, you're good to go. That is an oversimplification, as we have learned. And specifically, if you have like an energy manager or somebody like that, it is only the portion of their salary or time that is specifically devoted to that function of the municipal aggregation program may be, for lack of a better term, capitalized against those funds. It's not the right term, but you get it. So that since our program largely runs itself at this point, and it's only every once in a while that we do something, it would be an insignificant amount of an energy manager's that we could put towards it, which was a blow. We were looking to use that as a significant either starter fund or something that we could sustain this person for a while, and it threw us off. We went through this conversation in the community block grants and a couple other things.
Yeah, it's starting to refresh my
Yeah,
memory a little bit.
Kelly
Yeah.
filled us in.
Kelly
Yeah,
kinda-
I remember that now. Yeah.
Blew it up. So there are two other uses that I want to tell these guys about, and I think you've probably heard of them before. You can do a power purchase agreement and use those funds to kind of purchase the actual power and then filter it back into your municipal aggregation. The way that it was read was invest in a local clean energy generation by either entering into a PPA with a third party or developing a municipally owned system that contributes directly to the aggregation program. So that is a possibility.
Could you repeat that?
So we have the municipal aggregation program.
Yep.
It runs, I think last time I looked, it had like 980 meters on it. Those 980 meters do about, I don't know, I think it's a gigawatt hour for a month. It's a lot of energy. So if we had a large solar farm that the municipality were to purchase and operate, we could take those watts, for lack of a better term, and credit them against our municipal aggregation, and we could potentially offer that at a very discounted rate. Okay, and then we would never be able to build enough generation power to power all of this. We are not a power company. We are not National Grid, right? We could potentially add some price stability, maybe a little bit of a discount, but that's about it. So that would be one option. But we would take on the administration of that. We would take on the operations and maintenance of that. And
Does it have to be owned by you? Because you already worked
No.
with Select to do the
it could
solar,
be
the barn, the highway barn.
correct. So it could be a third party, and
Yeah.
that may be something we would go down. So that's an option. And then we could, and part of this we're seeing a little bit of with the new administration coming in, and they're shaking up a lot of things right now. They're shaking up a lot of programs, but going from the law of the land right now, the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 allows for something called an ITC direct pay from the IRS, which you guys are nodding your head. So this allows the community who doesn't pay taxes per se to achieve the same benefits as someone who would receive a tax credit. Okay, so we could pair that either with a green community grant. We could potentially do a DOER SMART program type of incentive. We could look at it to retire any renewable energy credits that we have for aggregation companies, something along those lines. But it would be a capital intensive project. It would be something we do. So we'd have to think about it. So to summarize it up, you have two choices allowable under the program as I understand it. You can either offset some of your energy manager salary that is appropriate to this, or you can look at this kind of capital program that ultimately results in the electricity that it generates going back into the municipal aggregation program. So there are options associated with it.
What would be the advantage to that?
The main advantage that I would offer to building something and then funding it in the aggregation program is, say, I don't know, insert large company that bids on our contract here, and they offer us 13 cents a kilowatt hour, right? We could generate a amount of energy, a unit of some energy, at a very low cost, right? And we could put that in the program and then create a blended rate off of that that says maybe it's instead of 13 cents, it's 12.9 cents because we've introduced this lower cost energy. We're talking about municipal adder. So just getting these guys up to date with what we discussed at the select board and what you had with Colonial Power.
Perfect.
Okay? So that would be an option. And just to summarize where we're at when you walked in, two ways to spend this money. Number one is for a salary, the portion that they give to the aggregation program for like an energy manager, or a capital project that funnels either a third party's energy or our own energy into the municipal aggregation program.
Does it have to be a either or could we say we could use you for?
No, all of those things are allowable.
Does the capital project have to be something that generates power, or can it be used for a traditional energy project? You know, whether it be like a lighting or a heat pump or.
I don't know.
Okay.
I think it has to benefit the residents because the
Oh,
money's
I see.
coming from the residents.
Okay. So it's got to benefit the residents collectively, not.
Yeah. One of the things that they specifically talk about is either the purchase of or the retirement of renewable energy credits. So we're at 100% with our aggregation program. We're already 100% green energy. So buying more RECs on top of that, or you can't up 100%. So
Right.
that's a limited avenue for
But
us.
what do we have about the highway department?
So what Amanda brought up is that we entered into a power purchase agreement with Select Energy, right? That they put the solar panels on the roof. They generate a contractual amount of energy that we get, and then we can apply that kind of, not really, but sort of like a behind the meter type of thing, as like a bill credit saying, hey, you generated 100 kilowatt hours, we get to take that off, and you pay for the 999,000 that you didn't generate, right? So that's how it benefits us, and we are locked into a long-term relationship with that corporation at a fixed price. So the benefit for the long term is inflationary, it smooths out some of the bumps associated with, I don't know, the price of oil goes up, or some kind of generation cost goes up, or whatever. It only affects the supply side. It doesn't affect the delivery side, which is entirely outside of our control. That's something that's you guys handle, and that the DPU or is it
Yeah.
DOER? DPU sets
Yep.
the rates for and all that.
So if you do the power purchase agreement, like you did on the highway barn, the Select is claiming the tax credit
Correct.
because they own the system. So like if Berlin wanted to buy more solar, if you own it outright, then you would be the entity that applies for the tax credit. But if you do the PPA, the power purchase
They
agreement,
deal
then
with
they'll deal with it. Yeah.
And of course, they take a cut, right? They have to make a profit off of this. So what you're weighing is, do the operational and logistic complexity that we would be taking on, being the sole owner, is it worth it versus having a corporation do this and handle it and then take their profit off of it? It's kind of like you can be a landlord and do everything yourself, or you can be a landlord with a management
Right.
company that handles all the other stuff.
The maintenance.
So that's where we're at, and that's kind of the decision behind that. And ultimately, I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth, Kristen, but
That's okay.
that's part of the reason why you chose to continue it, was to evaluate these options.
Just not to stop it, because it's a process to restart it if we decided to, but, we can still stop it. But those are options that are available to us, and what Colonial had said was, you had some great ideas and similar, these ideas in the past, and so that might be something you might want to explore.
So that's where we're at. So the status as of right now is that the adder's still being collected, and it will be for the foreseeable future. We likely have to spend some time talking about potential projects that would fit into the confines of these rules. But there are options that we would like to explore. So that's where. So any other questions on that, or that was more informative than anything, I guess. Okay, then if not, I'd like to transition to our National Grid quarterly meeting. Probably the first conversation thing, just to get everybody up to date, is to talk through the energy manager. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
So, thanks to Amanda. And we were actively pursuing joining multiple different towns to secure a grant for an energy manager that would be a shared resource between multiple towns, because we didn't really feel like our load alone was enough to employ a full-time person. So we had reached out to CMRPC, asked them if they could kind of be our agent and connector to hook us up, right? Because they're our planning agency. After a lot of discussion, we met with Boylston, right? Or it was Boylston, right? Boylston, we found out they weren't really in a position to join us for a number of reasons. We became aware of a proposal that was between Harvard, and somebody else.
Sterling or Lancaster?
Sterling,
I don't know,
maybe?
I get all confused.
And
Not Lancaster.
they were like, we wish we could have talked to you maybe a little bit earlier, but we're a little bit oversubscribed. They already don't like that there's 3 of us. Well, they think 3 is the maximum that they should do, and if we added a 4th, it's late enough in the process, it's just going to upset the apple cart. Okay. That was a disappointment.
At that point, I was like, "You gotta be kidding me!"
we were
We gotta find a team for
we
that.
were this close. So again, thanks to Amanda, she kind of put out the word, and she became aware and made us aware that Athol and Royalston were in the same boat, and they were willing to partner with us. So that was very exciting news. The only problem with it is that it was about 5 or 6 days before the deadline for the grant was due. So I wrote a bunch of stuff up, recycled a bunch of stuff that we did for the community block grants. Kristen came through for us in multiple different ways, getting letters of support. And to make a very tawdry story short, we managed to join the application. It was successfully submitted, and should it happen, which there is no reason to believe that it wouldn't. I mean, it is a competitive grant, and of course, there's no guarantee, but we have a chance. We would be joining with those two communities to share an energy manager, and that role would be to help us with the programs that National Grid can help us with, being a liaison between ourselves and Kelly and DOER. The ultimate really big thing that we want is to get a pipeline of shovel-ready projects for this community into your hands, work through economies of scale with these other communities, make sure that they're pre-vetted, so that when we do walk into Kelly's office with a proposal, we've got Sean nodding his head saying, yes, I know what this is, and yes, we've pre-approved the grants. It's in a professional format. Our aggregator, or like the guardians of the world, have weighed in, and we're all aligned, and Kelly can have a sense of confidence that we're not bringing in a half-baked or poorly conceived idea. So that's really what that person does. And they also have the job of moving us towards becoming a climate leader community. So that would involve policy decisions through the select board. That would work with Kristen to develop potentially a zero emission vehicle first policy, a carbon neutrality roadmap, all those things which we can do, but as a volunteer board, it would just be helpful to have somebody to pull it together, provide some continuity, be able to answer the phones on a regular basis when you guys call, and just, talk to her or their peer across the Commonwealth and say, hey, what are you doing? Maybe we can borrow.
Said you spoke with the town of Boylston?
Yes.
Well, they have their own electrical, they generate their own, so they wouldn't be
They do,
interested.
but they are eligible because they have gas
Eversource gas, right?
through, so their needs might be a little different. Because you're right, they do have a municipal plant, they have experts on
And
hand.
Hudson does too.
And Hudson does too. But there was still, and ultimately, I think that was part of the resistance. They're kind of like, I see work here, but not necessarily as much benefit as for you, and I'm not ready, and I haven't socialized this with my boards, and,
Well, it's just a regional school might be, but we've only got one school that would really
so
qualify.
with this energy, I promise I'll let you guys go. With the energy manager, the latest proposal that was put in, we needed to get the sign-off and buy-in of the regional school district. So we did, thank you, Kristen, we did manage to get the superintendent to put a letter of support in for us. So that opens the door for a lot of things for us, because we've had conversations with the school department. Sean, you hooked us up, with some of the lighting things that they're doing, and the
The mini splits.
B2Q, is that right?
We
Me
did
too.
an electrification study for this at the school.
Yeah, and also the electric.
Heat pumps.
What you just said.
Electrification or heat pumps, yeah.
What you just said.
Yeah.
So we've had some tentative conversations, reaching out to them, but it would be good to get them more into a joint conversation because we need them in order to be a
Yeah.
climate leader community. They must be on board.
And they had a
need-
little bit of a vacuum, right? Because they had some
Yeah.
turnover. They didn't have
we've
a acting
had-
business school business manager. They didn't. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
that.
Superintendent.
so
Right.
we've had.
So I think
Yeah.
you know.
It
So I
was
think it was
tough.
hard to get them to make any decisions on good projects like that. But
I even tried talking to some school committee members when we did our annual tour of the buildings, and Charlie and I talked a lot from Guardian, and I kept kind of saying, you know, there's these opportunities, but the school committee was not in a position to make those decisions without having a finance director or a superintendent, so that got tied
And
up.
there's
are both pieces in place now? I think.
We have an interim superintendent and
Okay.
a permanent finance director.
and there's
And they used to work together, so.
Oh, good.
And there's political, there always is political things, but there is political froth in the community water. Right now, there was at the last town meeting, there was a budget proposal that came in that caused quite a lot of consternation. And there is indications that the next one is also going to cause quite a bit of consternation. So they are cautious. They're cautious with spending in general.
Are they going for like an override?
It could result in that.
Well, yeah, they may not have to, but they may, because we have excess levy capacity. In our community meeting, we just have not taxed to the maximum levy amount, which is unusual, and we have a fair amount of it. So the past 2 fiscal years, they've been able to tap into that with just a town meeting vote, whereas an override is a 2-step process requiring both a town meeting vote and a ballot vote. And a lot of times you can get an override passed relatively easily at town meeting. The ballot is the more challenging hurdle, but we are rapidly cutting into that excess levy, and when it's gone, then we will have to do an override just like everybody else.
Because as a town clerk, the people who attend your town meeting are not the same people that will come out and vote.
True.
Especially when you're talking override. And there's
Especially if you're threatening the taxes for their houses.
and there's even talk of floating an underride to close that. So
I've never heard of that underride.
yeah, so
It is a possibility.
there that is probably background noise, frankly, from our
Yeah,
perspective.
well,
but
why
it's certainly
cut off
something
your
we need to-
nose to spite your face?
we need to understand it for sure,
Yeah.
because if we bring forth an expensive project, even if we walk in there and say 45% of this is off the top right away because we've worked with you guys, we've worked with
Well, the lighting was 50% paid for by Grid, and then the other half we were able to offer them on-bill financing, which is a means where they can repay us on their
Yes,
regular.
on their monthly bill.
Yeah, at no interest.
Yeah.
And that deal, unfortunately, is going to expire next month. So
But I'm on the capital planning committee, cause I don't know how to say no.
Mhm.
But aside from that, they want a roof and they want the new heating system to be basically mini splits.
Mhm.
which they
we did a study, engineering study, just to give them, scope of magnitude of costs and savings associated with that. And then separately, there's not one, but I think there's 2 project expediters that have either delivered proposals or are working on proposals. Guardian is one, but there's another one that I understand is involved. It's one of the newer PEXs.
Oh, no.
Joe Atkinson, I can't
Wow.
think
Good.
of the name of the
I know in our system I saw the
Energy
lighting.
Services or something. I don't know. I have to look it up.
I'm gonna have to look. I didn't know.
So I don't know if they're calling different vendors to get different pricing. That might be what's going on.
That would be good, because
Yeah.
one of the things that the last time they brought something forth that they were soundly criticized for was a perception, and I don't want to say that it was real, but a perception that due diligence wasn't done, or wasn't done to the level that was expected. So they could very well be
Mhm.
dotting every I and crossing
Yep.
every T to make sure that.
Just since we bounced around on a couple things, just a
Yes.
clarification point for the energy manager grant, since it's a public meeting and there's maybe
And you're being
folks
recorded,
watching
and-
out there. You also, Berlin joined the application with Montechusett Regional Planning Authority as the lead applicant. So for us, like to National Grid and Eversource, it doesn't matter which planning agency. It's just we just said as long as if there's a planning agency, they're allowed to be a lead applicant. So from our perspective, we were like, that's fine if they're not yours. Like they're willing to take you on. So they're based in Leominster. North Brookfield also joined the application. Oh, they snuck in at the last minute.
Wow,
They're
I didn't know
another-
that. Okay.
I think they're a little bigger than Berlin. I want to say they have like 4,000 people, but they have some things in common where they really felt like we're stretched for resources. We don't need that much help, but like we do need it, and let's squeak in here. So they joined that same application.
Well,
And
I gotta say that North Brookfield, Berlin, Athol, and Royalston definitely encompasses the rural contingent of Massachusetts. So hopefully that plays in our favor.
Yeah, Royalston, I think, is really small.
They're really small.
I
I had to look them up. on the
Maybe
map.
1,000 people in the town.
so Sean and I are not on the review committee.
Yeah.
One of our colleagues is the lead on that, Zach, and
Oh,
he'll
okay.
he'll be the one like kind of looking at the National Grid applications. I think this one is a joint one, so he'll be doing it with the folks from Eversource. And you'll find out in probably mid-March. I think we're gonna try to get it out as early in March as we possibly can. But it'll just depend on kind of if the Department of Public Utilities makes any
Mhm.
changes that affect this particular initiative in what they give back to us as far as their approval of our plan. So, but it'll definitely be March,
Nice.
and then so fingers crossed. I'm
Yeah.
rooting for you guys.
I mean, anything can happen, and I'm certainly we're not taking anything to the bank, but the philosophy I think behind this is you're never going to get it if you don't apply. Number one, and number two, eventually we're going to come up with something. So,
Yes, and since we were talking about the schools,
yeah,
I think I might have. I've been repeating this same message to a lot of folks, and it's been changing as I learn more information. But the Mass School Building Authority, I think I mentioned it on the call with BDQ. The Mass School Building Authority has their statement of interest process open for their accelerated repair program right now through middle of March. That's for windows and doors, roofs, and now heat pumps. They used to have a boiler program where they were replacing gas boilers. That was eliminated. It is now a heat pump program. So they will not open this again for 2 years. So I have never, personally, I'm not able to view the statement of interest process. I'm very keen to know what is involved in it. I understand it may be fairly involved, but only the school district folks can submit. You can't have like an outside consultant, so like I can't have our grant writer come and help
okay.
with that. But now would be really a prime opportunity. You can, so like if the superintendent wanted to submit the SOI for both the roof replacement and the heat pumps, you can do that. And then, so it's a good opportunity. You don't have to have any of the design or anything figured out, although you have that our study, which is only helpful, like it's only going to be more information if MSBA were to move forward with it, but MSBA like covers the cost of the design.
Do we
things
know,
like that.
and I realize you might not, but you have some more information than I do about the MSBA.
Yeah.
Is it just for, I know it's for heat pumps in lieu of boilers, but
Yep.
typically those boiler were for schools that, imminently needed to replace their boiler because they were, on the fritz, they were 25 years old, end of life. I don't know if is that similar with the heat pump program where it's got to be a school that is in need of replacement of the heating system, or can it just be a school that wants to electrify? Maybe the boiler's only 6 years old, but they want to decarbonize and they want to hit their greenhouse gas reductions. I don't know if that's even eligible.
Oh, right, because how old is the boiler? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't know.
I believe all of that is original to when the
Okay.
school was built, which would have been 1998.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they have the pellet.
We have
Yeah.
there's
I'm just saying hypothetically. I don't know what the case is in Berlin, but
I think MSBA is going to look more. Always best, just like DOER, always best to ask them directly, and I
Right.
can send you the
Yeah.
information to do that. But I think that they're looking at it similarly. Like it's probably going to be more advantageous to replace ones that
Yeah.
more so the system needs replacing.
Right, than just doing it for
But-
electrification or greenhouse
Yeah.
gas reductions by
But,
itself.
I mean, I think we would qualify at least, maybe not 100% to your
Right.
point, but the univents that are in BMS, Berlin Memorial School, I know are getting towards end of life, and they are
Yeah.
having all the usual dampers being stuck open, being stuck closed, all this other stuff associated with that. So
And it's oil too, so I don't know
Yeah.
if they'll score that higher than a natural gas boiler. You know,
I don't know how they're factoring that in.
Yeah.
We haven't.
Just a thought.
but I guess, Kristen, that may be something we could use your help with,
Yeah.
making sure that they're aware of this.
I'd be happy to reach out to Al and just say, I'm not sure where you guys are at with your thoughts on MSBA this year, but just curious if you were aware of the heat pumps, because we know that the roof has been on capital for at least
2 years.
now. Yeah, but
If they're doing the SOI for the
Yeah.
roof anyway,
you shouldn't.
I mean, I would say if you've been, since they're thinking about heat pumps, like, already, then that would be good to just combine. Like, you can put both, on the same application. And you can put for towns that want to put multiple schools, they can put multiple schools as long as they're not for the same program. In other words, like, you couldn't be applying to rebuild a school and doing the repair. You can do one or the other. And then the other thing is that Massachusetts Clean Energy Center's funding is gonna open up for the Green School Works program in approximately March. They are closely watching the MSBA program. They're gonna also be closely paying attention who applies to the MSBA program. They will be sending out some kind of a public message about this, but it hasn't gone out yet, but they're gonna be looking at who submits and who gets accepted into that program as a consideration factor. But their funding, they're also gonna be looking at schools that have like a fairly high population of low-income students. I don't know if Berlin will qualify, but I think they're trying to make it, like, it has to, through legislation, it has to have a focus on equity, but I don't know, they're trying to also make it as broad as they can, given that.
Yeah.
So, just like also something to keep in mind, I'll definitely, like, once that's out, share the information, but the fact that you have a study, you could maybe put in the SOI, like, it'll position you so that at least if you do wanna apply to that Mass EC funding, it'll be there to
And-
apply for.
And connecting some of the conversation we've had so far, both in this building, though less so now because there's been changes, but one of the considerations why we've never done, well, it's not our building anymore, but why we haven't done a true PPA, like putting solar across that blazing southern exposure, that part of the reason why it gets so hot in there is because it's unobstructed sunshine, right? But that could be part and parcel to say, okay, you replace the roof, you electrification.
So,
Now we're gonna come behind it and put solar and to, triple offset what we've got
Right.
going on here. Now we're doing actual generation on site, that takes care of this new spiffy, heat pump that we've got going on here with a brand new roof, so that if we do install solar panels in there, they're good for another, say, when they do asphalt 20 years or something like that, 15 or 20 years, and we don't have to mess with it. So we could connect with the help of the school, potentially, to do some of those adder programs and be able to kick in some of that, or to do a green community grant associated with it.
And for the DOER, so for the climate leaders in prepping for that, their DOER has a grant that I think has been coming out at least once a year for assistance with the decarbonization roadmap, and that is open right now. So if you did want to apply to that and take that step, I did see that it was open. We are offering National Grid. We have some options to do. We're calling it a portfolio prioritization plan that'll kind of help. It could check the same box, but probably at this point, that's still kind of in the earlier stages of rollout. So I would even. They probably would both take about the same amount of time to do, I think, at this point. But
Yeah.
I wanted to let you know that the DOER piece is available. So then it'll just get you one step closer to climate leaders.
One of the nice things that we have going for us is both bad and good, is we are a small community. We have a relatively short list of buildings
Mhm.
that would even be on the list that
Yep.
you
Right.
could do. So doing a neutrality plan, especially when you guys, B2Q has done this huge work with the school, that's one of the big buildings. We've put in a grant here, and, that do building controls and all that. So, electrification, we've got the work going on just down the, for those on the camera, I'm pointing that way. Pointing towards the work that's being done to build out the second floor above the public safety annex. Did we talk about that at all with you guys? Okay.
Has that already started construction, or is it in design?
Yeah. So
With Assabet.
if you take this hallway, and you
Yep.
go
The
around,
Vogue School.
you'll
Yes.
find a doorway, which leads to a overhead loft that is right now basically insulation. And both of our public safety agencies, fire and police, need space to accommodate mixed gender crews and places for them to sleep and eat and achieve accreditation for evidence storage and gun
Right.
storage and
They have like offices for a fire. They don't have a firehouse. They have like offices, a small kitchen, and a room that has 2 twin beds and 2 recliners in it. And so you have female firefighters that will not work overnight shifts, understandably don't want to, sleep in the same room, or, other, even male firefighters that don't feel necessarily comfortable sharing that type of space. And the entire rest of the space are just offices. So this would actually give us like what you would have a traditional sort of firehouse setup,
It's all part of this building.
It's all part of this
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
We can open the door down there, but
Yeah.
so that work has been designed. We are working with our local Voc Tech school. They're brought in a crew, I believe, already. They're swinging hammers.
And the carpentry build out right now.
If you go out into the parking lot when you leave, if you look to your left towards the fire apparatus bay, which is in the back, you'll see a staircase that they built that is basically a construction access to bring material in. So that's underway, and which actually gets back to one of the things we talked about is our big concern from the Energy Committee was we just did this grant for a building management system, right? We just, and you've heard me say this before, that the Franken building just keeps going on, and now we're building out this new wing, and I would be displeased if we compounded the problem that we have going on and have them doing their own thing over there that didn't tie into the building management system or used a different protocol or whatever. So I asked Kristen, with the help of the chief, McQuillan, to talk to the engineering team and say, you all realize that there is more to this building than just your part of it.
Right.
And we want to make sure that any demarcations that you lay out is accessible to the BMS, that they can have a
Is it brand new space, or is it just existing space that they're
brand new
retrofitting?
space.
It's, okay.
They're putting up studs.
It's been there since the building was created. It just was never built out.
It's like your attic in
Yeah.
there.
Oh,
It-
okay.
it wasn't
like you're
finished.
So like, it's like an
Yeah.
unfinished,
Unfinished,
unconditioned
Unconditioned space.
space.
Yep, it had
Okay.
basically like plywood,
Yeah.
flooring, beams on the sides, and
Okay.
some like
Over part of it.
insulation.
It's-
Okay.
Oh, I missed
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, yeah, it was
before.
going right down the middle.
So we have a renovations and additions program. It might be tough because it's already been designed and it's already under construction. But if you're touching any of the, like if you're adding insulation, if you're doing anything related to the heating system, HVAC.
I have a major problem with HVAC right now, so I'm actually really glad you're here. The system as designed cannot be done by the vocational school because it is a massive amount of duct work, and I'm being told that it would cost upwards of $300,000 to $400,000 to implement. And I have about $800,000 for the whole project, because the way that Assabet works is it's the cost of materials plus they do a 15% on the materials, which for their bus, the gas, tools, basically that. It's estimated to be a $2.3 million project, which is something we never would have been able to do otherwise without the students. And obviously they have trained, and licensed electricians, plumbers,
Yeah,
etc.
right.
But it ended up being a far more complicated design apparently than was originally
Are you
envisioned.
connecting to the existing building HVAC, or is that space getting its own new dedicated
So
system?
getting its own, and
It's getting
then
its own.
connecting by like BACnet to the BMS control system for the rest of the building was
So,
the concept.
You're going to have, I'll try to explain the end state as best I understand.
And how much space, just so we know, like, how much
Yeah.
space is this?
I will,
I
is
need
that
the
door
square
open?
footage.
I mean, we can't
It's
take.
not, but you know what? I'll get the code.
I mean, for $2.3 million, it must be a decent amount.
It's,
Yeah.
so,
5,000 square feet.
Well, when you first came in and you saw public safety as you were coming to the main
I'm
door,
gonna try to estimate.
it's all the space over public safety, including the fire in the back that you don't see.
I would say that is at least 120 feet by 40. And it would be half of it. So it would be the attic of like a
Mhm.
120 by 40.
So that's 4,800 square feet. And you said half of that?
Well, it would be, no, that would be right, so. I'm pulling
I
these
think Chief will
numbers
write me back.
right
No,
out
I
of
mean,
my
I'm just
brain.
trying to get, you know,
You
it's
can,
not,
you can follow up. I mean,
yeah,
like,
it's,
here,
we don't need
have
exact, we're
it.
just trying to get an idea, like.
Yeah, 4,800.
But again, if it's already under construction, that makes it really hard for us to qualify anything under the program guidelines. You have to be in contact with Mass Save before you start construction.
Okay. Well, we can at least.
I mean, there's
ground
no
you-
lighting incentives for new construction. Insulation, you gotta go above what code requires. So the only thing you might miss out on is if you put a heat pump in.
So the end state, feel myself saying this again, that I understand it, is you're gonna have this building, this traditional building that you're used to, that we're sitting in, would be still oil. But that annex, that wing, that living space would be heat pump.
And you have a separate HVAC contractor who quoted the heat pumps?
Not right now, this is the mechanical engineer, and also I did involve Guardian because we were talking about trying to connect it up, and, you know, that was sort of a ballpark estimate of the work that, I forget if it was Guardian or someone else, but it would literally shut down the project and we wouldn't be able to continue, so we're now going back and forth with the architect and their mechanical engineer, trying to put in something simpler, but we're running up against some road obstacles. So it might actually be if we could have some technical support even or something that might be able to help us. This literally just happened, where Assabet wrote back and was like, okay, we're gonna have to pull out of the HVAC part of the project because it's too complicated. And I went, because then they proposed mini splits and a couple other things that were less complicated, and the mechanical engineer said you can't do that up there.
Okay.
So I guess in that case, it sounds like, you know, theoretically, it's not totally designed.
No,
There's
the
there's-
HVAC has to be redesigned.
So we could, tomorrow I can loop in Olivia from Lido. Lidos is the company we use for our new construction program.
Yep.
To see if it makes sense to have you go through that pathway.
Okay.
To get some assistance from them on the design of the HVAC system. And I might follow up with with Joe on the trade partnerships team to see
Yeah.
if there's a couple.
It's gonna be tricky, cause, I mean, we don't really, we don't pay for designs per se. Our assistance is, we'll work with an architect and an engineer to make sure they're incorporating some of the best design practices with
Okay.
regards to energy efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can review the design and say, okay, if you do this, you can be looking at this type of incentive. If you do something else, you might be able to get a little bit more, that type of thing. But for us to go out and pay for, you know, a design firm to do a design, it's not really what we
Yeah,
do.
that's not your scope.
Right.
No.
Well, even just to start with sort of the technical assistance piece of it, because what we're running, you know, up against is obviously we're limited by cost, but it's a really great project from, you know, like a town school collaboration side, and it has ARPA funding in it as well as local funding, so our legislators are really excited about it. And, you know, the mechanical engineer, I think we've hit a bit of a wall with the mechanical engineer, who just is kind of like my way or the highway a little bit. So I'm almost looking for almost like a third party or to just look at it and say, because not only am I concerned about, the project coming to a halt, but even if it doesn't have to come to a halt, I would like to make sure it ties in with the rest of the building and to Tim's point, doesn't further Frankenstein the system. And, this is an opportunity right now to, ensure that as well, because we have to take a second look at everything. I know as it was designed, it had a tremendous amount of ductwork and it was designed to maximize energy incentive. The problem is we don't have a project manager because it's literally, there's no contractor, general contractor with subs. It's me and the fire chief who are trying to kind of help this along. So it's sort of one of those things where we're
In the trade school kids.
and the trade school, yep, we're moving it along as best we can, and the project manager does have a CSL, is a construction supervisor's license, but is not or the school manager is overseeing it, but obviously is not a contractor per se. So it's quite a challenging project.
He's not a project manager either. I mean,
Correct.
That's
Which is a whole
specialized-
different-
Why is there so much ductwork if you're
I
not
have no
connecting to
idea.
the existing building HVAC, right?
It's very interesting.
Maybe
I
because of
gotta
where
go
it is in
back
the
and
attic?
look.
I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
glad you asked because I didn't get it either. I mean, my
Because heat pumps generally don't.
they don't need much.
require.
That's kind of the
Well, I mean,
point.
that's why you
But
have,
if it's mini split,
yeah,
can it just
ductless
be
mini
mini
splits
splits?
means there is no ductwork.
Well, and that
You
was
still
where we
need
were
some-
headed to begin
But
with.
you still need some for ventilation, so you need some ductwork for ventilation, but if you.
But you can do those high flow ones, the high
Yeah.
pressure, and that's what I recommended to the Bullard House. Is say, hey, you just need low. Anyway, but the
Okay.
Yeah, just keep that in mind, that like if any new construction projects for town facilities.
Renovations, anything.
Or
Anything
major
where you're touching
renovations or
any
small
building.
additions, you have to let us know as soon as possible, even if it's just in schematic design
Okay.
or just feasibility, because
Did-
we have to get involved in early, otherwise you might not be eligible for incentives.
so I.
Yeah, this started well over a year ago
Yeah, it
with
was-
conceptual design, and before we unfortunately before we formed the partnership, so it's a little,
Those are great.
I mean,
You
it's a
can
small
bring us in-
project, so
yeah.
you're not looking at,
No, it's not huge.
tons of incentives that you could have missed out on. Like I said, you don't get any incentives on new lighting for new spaces. Insulation, you gotta go above a code to get anything. And then really the big one is really on the HVAC side, it pretty much has to be heat pump to get anything. So,
Yeah.
I'm gonna start with Leidos, because it's a
yeah,
renovation.
you have an architect, right? So there is a design, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
yes.
Did they design the HVAC, but
They
then,
subbed it,
They
right?
subbed it to a mechanical engineer
but then,
who works with the
but then the
architect.
shop student, I don't wanna say students, lack of a better word, but the shop kids
It was
said
outside.
it's above their expertise to
Yeah,
install.
I mean, if you're doing
Correct.
a bunch of sheet metal bending
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I can see where that could happen.
So you do have a fully designed HVAC system, they can't
Right.
build it, it's above
Oh,
their capabilities, yeah.
Yeah.
So Assabet, there's 10 little mini dorm rooms. So Assabet is recommending mini splits for the sleeping areas, Mitsubishi cassette style mini splits,
Yeah.
One per room. And then for the common area, using a regular ducted air handler that's part of the same Mitsubishi system that will include an energy recovery ventilator to
Yep.
ensure proper ventilation. And then the BACnet protocol to connect up, and the engineer was just really opposed to the first part of the plan, which was the mini splits for the sleeping area. He didn't seem to have an issue with the common area regulated ducted air handler or connecting in with the BACnet, but I'm trying to figure out what he was actually recommending that is so much more complicated, and I'll have to pull that up somewhere.
Maybe, so yeah, if you can send me, Kristen, it doesn't have to be right now, it could be, whenever at your convenience, if you can send me
The deets.
whatever the details are that you want us to, that would be helpful for our vendor to, and try to see what they can, what kind of technical assistance. Our new construction program does provide some level of review and assistance.
Okay. I'm putting you
I
both
don't know
on
how
this.
detailed it will be in this particular situation, but we
Could be
can
nothing,
see.
could be
And
something.
then, my list of HVAC contractors, I'm realizing will probably be similar to, it would be the list that I gave to the Historical Society.
Yeah.
Those are for smaller space, like medium-sized spaces.
Yeah, we should
So
talk about that too.
Sure.
So, gosh, this was pre-Christmas. I met with June and the rest of the Historical Society. Just trying, they're desperate if they reached out to me because this is not my bag. I'm an electrical engineer, not an HVAC engineer. But they're asking for, what can the Energy Committee do? What can you tell us about putting in some kind of heating and cooling system in this very historic home?
that's good.
So I went out there and I said, you know what? I did a quick Google search. I did some research. And I showed them some of the options that they're talking about for historic. It was high flow, mini splits, basically what it was. And then I did what I've been doing a lot of is I sent them to Amanda and said, you know what, this is something that you should really leverage with our National Grid partners because they know this, they know more than I do, and talk about it. So Amanda, I've been part of the conversation just peripherally, but June and Amanda and others, they've been in communication. There's been a list of potential vendors sent over to them. There's been discussions that have gone back and forth with a couple of them about what they're doing. And I guess that's the background, and the question I wanted to ask for you is, would what they're doing play into the renovation piece too, or is it?
I think they're just doing a heating system upgrade.
Okay.
So like if it's a renovation, it's a bigger scale. Like you're doing multiple things at the same time in the space. It's actually reminding me. I just found out today that we have kind of a very new service that we're providing for small businesses and nonprofits where they can get a consultation with a heat pump expert to compare quotes from HVAC contractors. So this
They
will be.
would love that.
I had already talked to her. I mean, I told June to let me know when she got her quotes.
Yeah.
I think they got at least one so far, but that will be a good tool. And then Joe, who gave me those names, is one of our colleagues, and he can also kind of, he's happy to look at it too. But
Yeah. So Sean, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, this is early 1800s.
I would say 1860.
So Civil War era.
Yeah.
Kind of that classic New England grow over time.
Oh, you're talking the Bullard House?
Bullard House, yeah.
1760.
Okay, so 1760.
Oh, wow.
Hand
It's
dug.
the first house in Berlin.
No kidding.
Hand dug cellar. The foundation is 300 or 200 years old. It's starting
Wow.
it's starting to sag. There's been
There's some issues.
There's
Is the
been
red one? Oh,
yeah. There's been a lot of volunteer activity to try to shore it up, and sometimes that has been counterproductive. Sometimes it has been productive. So they are, and there's additions. There's multiple pieces of it that are of different vintage, right?
Right.
The ultimate goal for the facility is they would like to use it as kind of a community museum to show some of the artifacts that they've accrued over time and to put it in different eras, like their eras tour of what Berlin was like. And what you find is, when you go in there, is like the cellar has this really old, really old oil furnace in there, and a sketchy tank, and it's in a fieldstone base with dirt all around, and you've got ducting going this way and that underneath the floorboards, and sometimes you got a crawl space like this, and sometimes you have overhead space, and it's got a second floor too, so it's wending its way up through this different things. So they've got their hands full, and like step zero for them was to get it conditioned, and they've had different sources in there, and things like hot water. I'm like, okay, you guys don't need a domestic hot water system in there. You're not having people taking showers. You're having people washing their hands when they use the lavatory.
Right.
So you need to consider things like on-demand
Right.
hot water, and how do we get the ducting through these ridiculously small spaces? And you're talking floor beams that are old-growth timber that are 20 inches.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's everything that's tricky in my experience with dealing with a home or a building is in that place, from septic to water to ducting to everything. So they've got their hands full, and connecting them to the right resources to handle a historic build, and they even have like fundamental knowledge things like, what can we do from an HVAC perspective that's not going to compromise the historic integrity of this, and what can we hide, and all that other stuff. So it's been a lengthy conversation. It's been a lengthy project for them, like decades. So they're slowly
When I was
putting
in
it
high school, I actually volunteered there.
There you go.
That was,
So that was 4 years ago.
yeah, like
And,
approximately.
93, 94-ish.
So that's another area that we've been getting a lot of help. And thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. I mean,
Do you have any other, we talked about the school a lot in this building. Do you have any other town facilities
Yeah. So
that haven't really, done energy projects?
one of the
What's your whole portfolio? I just want to get a lay of the
So-
land.
okay. I'll try to go in order of energy from memory. So take it with a grain of salt.
Obviously the school and then this
School in
building.
here, number
Yep.
1 and number 2.
Yep, yep.
Number 3 would be a new highway barn, new that was commissioned like 2014, maybe later than that. No, it was
Okay.
later than that. 2020 maybe, 20,
I
somewhere
think
around.
18. I think they opened in 18,
Okay,
2018.
so 2018, pre-COVID.
So it's around. It's like a garage type thing for,
Yeah.
for their trucks. And
Yeah.
Plows.
So
Has some offices space
Yeah.
in it too.
the,
Yeah.
it was one of those projects that started off here, and then budgeting
Yep.
made it come back from here. That's part of the reason why we did the PPA. It was originally was planned for
Yep.
solar, and then they took it off. And everything about this facility was designed to be electrified.
Yep.
Right? And then they took the primary means of generating electricity off of it. So it generated some whopper electricity bills. So now we've offset that
Mhm.
with the PPA a little bit. But there are still things that I see as a need there. For example, we have these large doors. They open up,
Yep.
and then we're using basically forced hot air from the ceiling, and all that hot air.
So is it
goes-
oil heated?
Electric.
It is
It's
electric.
all electric?
It's all
Like
electric.
electric
Heat
resistance heat?
Or
Or is it heat pumps?
It's not heat pumps.
So it must
Oh,
be
it's
electric
electric
resistance?
resistance?
Yeah.
oh,
So there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity to, I know they've seen some of the screening and some of those blower systems that kick in with doors when you open up to try to push the hot air.
Yeah.
Back
Infrared,
in.
yeah. Infrared heat pumps we see a lot of those projects
Yeah.
in garages like that, although there's no more incentives on the gas ones anymore, but it still might be a
But
good
this
fit.
is, yeah, I mean, this is a
Well, you wouldn't have gas, so it'd have to be propane anyways.
yeah. So that I see means of maintaining the usability of that space, because it's a great space.
Mhm.
Okay, it was designed. I think that one of the challenges that we hear repeatedly from, and Kristen, cut me off if I'm, but from boards and our departments is the need for space. We're in a process right, getting back to the portfolio. I promise there's a point. We're actually trying to tear down some stuff. So we have some buildings that are just, they're not worth what we're paying to heat them and cool them. So that's going on. Specifically, if you look out here, we have a small, right on the corner there's the old highway, or the old rescue barn and the old fire station. They have mold problems, they have all these other things. Those will be ultimately coming down.
Okay.
So to the portfolio question that you have, the town barn would
Yep.
be the next biggie. Then there's the library, which I would put that one around
Yeah.
1920.
1925.
Which actually, my GPS brought me there before I came here.
Okay, so
You're
you've
not
seen
the
this.
only one.
It's pretty small.
It's pretty small.
Yeah.
It's basically a large home
Yeah. It's like
that has
maybe
been converted.
2,000 square feet.
It's
give or
very
take.
small.
Yeah.
We have not touched it significantly with any great community grants. It was on our radar.
Yep.
When we had Guardian spec it was a lot of, how did Charlie put it? He didn't like it because it was a lot of small stuff.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really worth his while.
Yeah.
So he you know, obviously upsold us a little bit and pushed us towards things here.
Yeah.
But there is work there. There is windows. There is air sealing. There is
Yeah.
some of the stuff that is table stakes. If we could do that. Now the return on that is relatively low because you're dealing with essentially a large home.
Yeah. Is it how are the hours of operation in there? Are they?
It's changed a
Is
little
it just a
bit.
few hours a week, or is it every day?
I don't think it's every day. I think it is
think they're-
multiple.
I think they're 4 days,
Okay.
That sounds
And is
right.
it oil heat, probably?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that would be.
Yeah.
It's roughly 20 hours a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're not open Friday, but they are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Saturday.
And then you drop off relatively quickly. So like probably the next one, we have a lot of building, like the Legion Hall comes to mind, but the Legion Hall is also in play right now to potentially be either transformed into affordable housing. It could go to the neighbors, but there's an active effort to divest that from the town.
That was the first elementary school in
Yeah.
the west part of Berlin.
Yeah.
It was a single
And the
single
historic
room.
committee has expressed an interest in that. So there's a lot of people who are now interested now that it has percolated back up. And full disclosure, my wife is the Affordable Housing Trust Chair, so it percolated up because of her.
For all this time, it has been used as sort of a VFW for the,
Which
So it's
is,
called the Legion Hall, but
Yeah.
it's owned by the town.
Yes.
Used to be a school.
yes.
And about square footage, it's
Let's put it this way, it is targeted by Habitat for Humanity, so we're talking, I would say, 900 to 1,100 square feet.
Okay.
Oh, it's like targeted for a
Teeny.
home.
A home.
A home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
Not
quite small.
teeny,
All right.
it's a
So really, once you
respectable-
get past this building and the highway garage,
It drops off
they're pretty small. I
wicked
think.
fast.
So-
Yeah.
Which is what I thought, what I
1872.
remembered,
Yeah.
us talking about. Okay.
So like our opportunities on the climate leader green community space
Yeah.
fall off very quickly once you get off the buildings. And
Right.
then you're starting to get into fleet, which we've worked with you guys on,
Mhm.
fleet management, and we need to, kind of talk about EV first, and that would be the next largest component of our overall energy.
What about, you probably have all septic here in Wells. You have water and wastewater pumping stations, anything along
So
those lines?
it's all septic and well,
Okay.
including this building.
different parts of the town do have a public water supply, like First Parish
River
Church.
Bridge.
Yeah, well, River, that's private. I mean,
Right.
they put it in. The public would be like the Gates Pond area, which is coming off of Hudson, right?
Oh, it's
Yeah, I
going
think
over
so.
from a neighbor green.
Yeah, you've got a couple of areas like that. So our water, like our challenges in water don't come so much from a conservation standpoint. I mean, sure they could. If we have a protracted drought.
No, I was
and-
more thinking along the lines of, do you have
we have
pumping stations? Those usually
we-
can be very
we do
energy
not.
intensive. Okay.
Well,
And
Yeah.
this-
I will say for any of your buildings that we've already talked about, if you want to pursue any energy efficiency this year. So this was my first year making goals for towns, and I lowballed them, I guess. But I guess I really lowballed them. So you already like hit
blew
your,
past it.
you already like with that one
All
lighting
right.
project, like
We get some positive
Nice job.
press
Hit a
from
big goal.
that.
Right.
Thanks, Amanda.
we can make, if you want to make some positive press, I'm happy to work with you on that, Kristen.
All right.
Because you did in fact achieve that goal, so that just like kind of automatically qualifies you the next couple of years. Actually, like the rest of our MOU term in for the 65 cents a kilowatt hour
Okay.
instead of the 60 cents. So it's just kind of
Right.
like unless there's a promotion or something that is higher than that, we'll always give you the highest one.
What projects do we have in there?
It was just the lighting that was in December. It was logged in December.
Lighting at.
Town hall LEDs.
Oh, that was downstairs.
It was the whole building.
Was it the whole building?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
They
We
went
did
through
that.
the whole
We did that
building.
with the promo OBR. I forgot all about that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, that
I was-
was like a last
That's
minute,
right.
like, hey, we can get this in, sign up for it.
Yeah,
And
that's
speaking as a cellar dweller during the elections, having those lights on, awesome.
Was it good? Okay.
Yeah, I
Because
forgot
I
about
just kind of
that
had to
part.
move on that one, and I was
That
like,
was nice. It didn't look like you were entering a dungeon to vote, so we were very, very pleased with that.
We do have
Just
18
tell
and
tell the people in the
72.
school staff, maybe get that.
I will.
That's the message I've been carrying
I will
for
tell
like
that to anybody who
months.
wants to listen. Those LED packs are awesome.
Have you gotten a schedule from Charlie yet on when the controls and the weatherization?
He's trying to get us on the schedule. The last email that I received from him, let's see, Charlie.
I had talked to him too. He's maybe a couple of weeks ago. And on the weatherization, I was asking him specifically.
He
You need to
said,
knock those out so that you can apply in the fall again for something else.
Yeah.
What you say?
we will not be getting into the Green Communities Project for a bit. There are 2 other sizable control projects ahead of it in the queue. It will be at least a few months, but the insulation and weatherization project will be sooner. It has been ordered with our sub, but we have a number of projects that have greatly enhanced incentive where there is an installation deadline as a condition of the incentive, and that is not the case with your
I know
project.
exactly what he's talking about.
I am guessing the latter half of March or April.
Okay. I'm
That's still fine because for the fall round, you know it's
August.
usually end of August, even early September is usually when the deadline is. So.
Okay, because we have to have this done before we could be eligible
Correct.
for
Yeah.
additional
Yeah.
you have to
funding
have
in the
closed
next
out.
round.
So
Yeah.
Kelly has to come out. She has to view it.
Yep.
She has to,
Then you got to get all the reports in, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but that would work fine. You know,
Okay.
if it was completed,
because
even was completed in the summer. You know, as long as it's not too late in the summer, you should be fine.
I could easily see some of the electrification projects at the school suddenly bouncing up into our green
Yeah.
community
Yeah.
queue.
Yeah.
'Cause that meets the requirement. You know.
I'll just briefly mention just because it affects the timeline. So Sean will stay on top of that so that we can make sure, we want to make sure you get in that fall
Yep.
deadline. I'm going to be out most of the second half of the year because I'm having a baby in July. So I'll be on parental leave for like kind of through the end of the calendar year. So you're in
Congratulations.
good hands with Sean. But I'll have more details on that, like when it gets closer, on like kind of if there's anybody else. But you know how to find us. So yeah. Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Exciting. But we won't let that get in the way of you getting it.
No. What else?
Covered a lot of ground. So, I think Kristen, before you stepped into the early part of the meeting, I was mentioning just like one other opportunity that you can take advantage of. UMass Lowell, there's some funding. I don't know. UMass Lowell has funding for a like an energy fellow program. So it'd be a
Okay.
grad student or an undergrad
Oh.
to do any kind of energy project you want. Like you kind of write. It's a very simple form. I'll send over the link tomorrow.
Okay.
It's cost neutral, like they're paying for all of it. They'll do like all of the payroll stuff. They're just looking for host communities. It could be something focused on residents. It could be focused on like the town buildings. It could be like if you're looking for an engineer, if you're looking for somebody who's more of like a marketing person, you can put your little summary together, and they're looking for a diversity of different types of communities around the state. So.
Okay.
It's kind of a short time window to get the applications in, but they made it really easy to do
Okay.
it. So, yeah,
So
could
some-
be just
So some ideas.
I was
Yeah.
just gonna ask.
So some ideas. Let me clarify. So this is would be like a summer type of co-op,
full
and then
time in the summer and then part time
part-time.
during the academic year.
Wow.
so
At least I think, at least for fall semester, I don't know. You'll have to kind of ask them.
you'd have
Starting
to-
in the summer or
Starting in like May, yeah.
So I think if I were to structure a program like this, and I'm going to make it kind of person and background agnostic, I would immerse that person in projects because I'm guessing that the construction is still going to be ongoing this summer, maybe tailing in, but that is some hands-on experience with a change. We still have the whole fleet review that could be a useful experience as they go through working with you guys, as well as our department heads on giving them options. One of the things that Lisa saw at MMA was the town of Wellesley had a whole display, both their lightning trucks that their DPW yard is
Those are
using, as
cool.
well as police cruisers.
Yep, when they
So-
bring their thing, and is that
Yeah.
the ones that you can go inside and see like?
They had them all out there. They have a fleet manager who we have his card. He's happy to do show and tell. So maybe that could be something that they could set up along with our department heads, right, to facilitate that. From what Charlie said, you're going to be seeing the tail end of closeout of the green communities. That is something that they could certainly help with report drafting, as well as taking pictures, working through that. That would be in the ramp-up period for the fall submission. So one of the aspects of that is they could potentially either be on the brainstorming side or even the prep side of a green community grant proposal. And if you wanted to take it out into the community, we also have the whole climate leader thing. They could be starting to knock off some of the requirements for climate leader, a draft plan, and that is then something that we can turn over to you guys to have professional review done on.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, the more, having been a grad, I'm like others I'm sure here, having been a grad student myself, I think having a very discrete projects where like, I need this deliverable by this date,
Yeah.
you'll get a better end result.
I was
But-
also thinking some of the building like the facilities study too, and the energy audit that's a part of it, and maybe helping to prioritize
Yeah.
some of those projects and match them up with grants or incentives, because
Mhm.
I have a great big
Yeah.
study that I haven't even been able to fully digest.
Yeah.
EV charging station.
That as well.
Okay.
And I would say, I guess my advice to you, dealing with our own interns, right, is to chunk it up
Yep.
and go to UMass Lowell and say, here is a menu of options of projects that we have, and we are willing to work iteratively through them with maybe one person or several, and match us to the right person.
Yeah, that's what they'll do. You
Yeah.
give them a project and they're gonna recruit based on that.
Yeah.
Now, some of these things, of course, we see potentially for the energy manager. So how would those dovetail together? Would the energy manager then be able to funnel things to that
I
person?
think that could be supplemental support for the energy manager. I think that the energy manager, should we prevail in this, we're talking March, you're going to be in a procurement process where this person would be brought on board.
True. Yeah.
So, knowing the speed that we work, and I'm guessing our partner communities, we would, especially with a joint thing, I don't see that person starting necessarily until late spring at the earliest. And that would actually be helpful. That would be a good experience for a grad student or something to say, here's a brand new person, you're brand new, learn together
Mm.
type of approach. Because that would, sorry.
No, because your energy manager's gonna be more of like a consultant. They're
Right.
only gonna have a limited number of hours a month, probably, because they're
Got
not
it.
gonna really be working in.
Right, and they're gonna doing
offices, so.
round robin to different communities. So they could say, okay, talented grad student, here's what I would do if I had the hours, or
Mm.
here's a priority list, start chewing on this, and then, obviously you would likely be the supervisor, but, I can help with this too, and say, let's talk, let's see how you're going, how you're
Yeah.
putting it together. Because ultimately, even though we wanna get something from this is meant to be a learning experience for the student.
Oh,
So-
sure.
So we wanna.
Working with us will be a
And that's part of it too. I mean, you're dealing with
We're
undergraduates and
special.
graduates who maybe have not been in a professional work environment, or if they have, it's been limited. And they
Sure.
certainly haven't been in town government, which is a whole subset and culture of its own.
Right. Well, this could be mutually beneficial because, I felt so terrible that I couldn't do that grant that we had started on because, I'm wearing so many hats between HR director, IT director, CFO, town administrator. I mean, literally, the list goes on and on. So, unfortunately, there are some times that I have to say no. And this is an area where there's so much promise and opportunity, even if we don't get the energy manager grant, to
Yeah.
have have somebody, it would help me, you know, and help them, so it's mutually
I mean,
beneficial.
From my perspective on the board here, or the committee, it would seem, I know we're going long, sorry. It would seem that the facilities study
Yep.
with the associated ECMs,
Yep.
organizing it, doing, I mean, potentially, if you're talking an engineering student, they can conduct their own field surveys. They can go out with Fred and say, look, see, touch, get a real visceral sense of what's going on here. That would be an easy one, saying, Veritas gave us this slew of information. We have yet to make it, with recommendations, we have yet to create a project plan or actionability off of this. Go do that.
So you can be very specific about what skills you're looking
Yeah.
for too, and they'll try to recruit somebody based
I
on.
mean, the
Okay.
ideal thing would be a prioritized list with a project plan that we then hand to you and say, okay, how does this fit into the grant proposal? How does this fit into the incentive programs and all that? And then we look at the top fish and say, this is our next green community grant proposal.
Right.
And the easiest way to get, I mean, I'm gonna leave it to you, Sean, too, but the easiest way to get that kind of report to us of like, what are the things that we're eligible for is working with somebody like Guardian
Okay.
or one of the
Okay.
other project expediters to have them, if they haven't already walked through all the buildings, which I'm assuming they have.
They must have, I mean,
Just
as
do
far as
that.
as part of becoming a green community, you had to go through all the buildings, right?
Yeah.
Identify all ECMs.
But we were 12 years ago. I mean, we've been in the community for a long time. So,
Yeah.
you know, with the dynamics of buildings going down, questions about what, if anything, will replace them. If
Yeah.
we get into our head to put something new up, we want energy efficiency to be
Mhm.
from the start. So,
Absolutely.
Definitely, different program, yeah, so whenever you, if and when you decide to build a new building, let us know as soon as you kind
Yeah.
of have
I
that.
mean, I don't think it's going to happen in the near term, but
Yeah.
lesson learned.
But it's not
from-
going anywhere, it'll be.
Yeah.
So you don't know off the top of your head if Guardian is, or anyone has walked through the garage, right?
I don't think so.
I don't
The
know.
highway garage.
I don't think Guardian's been in there.
About how many, what's the square footage of that building?
Oh God, I just sent this over to, for the, I had to calculate this all
Oh,
out.
yeah, you can send us a spreadsheet, yeah, because you had to come up with this.
Let me see.
Guardian's been through this building and it's
Oh, they
been
know
through the
this
school.
building.
Yes, those two buildings I know, because we've done projects.
And they also
With
did
them.
a report with us.
Yeah.
And we did all the low-hanging fruit.
But the garage sounds like that's your third biggest building, so
It is.
sounds like maybe that's something we should
Well,
target.
didn't the fire department look, they want door replacements?
You know, if it's a small enough project, it doesn't have to be small, but I'm just thinking of financial impact. I mean, we have bond bill financing too. So if there's something at the fire station, not the fire station, highway garage, whether it be lighting, whether it be heat pumps, and you don't want to wait for a green community grant, I mean, we can help finance it through our on-bill repayment program too.
Yeah, I mean, that's what really helped us with the lights, because it was a very minimal cost to be able to do everything with the OBR.
All
But
right.
can they help with the fire replacement doors?
Doors, not typically.
Anything else?
It's got to be something that saves energy. I mean,
Do you have anything else?
building
If
envelope
you-
measures,
We did talk about
like
this in the
windows and
charging
doors,
request.
Yeah.
Peak time, so if you.
they're not
only
cost
if you need
effective
anything from us, I will
as
say
far
like,
as what they cost relative to the energy
our
savings, so
public
it's never really
charging
a measure that the
budget is
utilities can incentivize.
caps are really
There might be something in the next
to
3-year
approve us
plan
to
where we may be able to
that
pay a
budget.
little bit, but by and
so that
large,
might
just
be
the
that.
savings are
We
so
could
small
put
relative to
in
the
the
cost,
application with Voltrek that we would buy that
there's just
as a
never really been
channel.
incentives for those types of
Um,
things.
Well,
Okay,
there's
thank
more to
you.
it
Yep.
than that. So we had a side conversation for the camera and for everyone else. Talking about the EV charger. Amanda, can you just kind of repeat the?
Just that our, I think this was still in effect 3 months ago when we met, but our public charging, budget is kind of at cap, so we're just waiting on the Department of Public Utilities we're pending approval to put more budget into that and move around, funding.
Okay.
We do still have funding for municipal fleet vehicles and for multi-unit dwelling, I'm sorry, municipal fleet EV charging and multi-unit dwelling So anyway, if you haven't seen movement on those particular applications from Voltrek, that would be why.
Well, we haven't seen movement for other reasons. So just to, not to prolong the meeting much longer, because I know we've been going for a while, but there was a kind of a community outreach, not kind of, there was a community outreach meeting with the location there, and there was pretty strong opposition. So that sent the project kind of back to square one. It's actually coming back to us because the proponent of it was our Economic Development Committee, and they got feedback that there's no economic development to have, so they're kind of like, we're done. So we're looking at it from an energy standpoint, and it would be here because we see it as a gateway to our fleet electrification for the municipality. So we have talked about this repeatedly at this board. I brought it up actually at the select board when I spoke. We're leaning towards a hybrid approach where it would be public-private to try to thread but the complexity of it is not insubstantial, right? So our goal is to get in contact with Voltrek and say, okay, let's talk again like we're starting over, and it would probably be here.
Okay.
Okay. And yeah, one of the trade-offs that we discussed was I was aware that in the municipal, you still had funding. I knew you were reaching cap on the other one. And we're looking at fleet electrification and saying, well, we're stuck in this a little bit of a catch-22 that we don't necessarily want to do fleet electrification if we don't have the charging capabilities in there. We don't necessarily want to jump into the charging capabilities if we don't have a plan towards fleet electrification. So we need to break that logjam.
If you're planning on buying a vehicle in the next fiscal, let's say FY '26, how big a time to also put in the application for?
Okay.
You could just kind of do them both at the same time, right?
So we got work to do, Kristen.
We do.
But it seems like we're in good shape. Like we keep getting indications like we're in good shape. There's not necessarily a rush, but if
Okay.
again, like if you're looking at if you're looking at purchasing something for FY '26, whether it's like a plug-in hybrid police cruiser or something, then you have a reason to have the charger.
Yeah.
So, and it only has to stay. I think it's like a 4-year contract. Like you sign the terms and conditions, and I think they said it's only 4 years, which it feels like not a huge amount of time. And then
No.
after that, you can control how you want it to operate. Like if you want it to be partly for fleet, partly for public.
Okay.
We just ask that it's for 4 years at least for the fully municipal fleet.
Okay. All right. We covered a huge amount for not having much of an agenda. But that's kind of how I roll. So anyway, anything from you guys? Any new business?
No, I was looking to see if I could find, I thought when we did here, when Guardian went through here, because I think I actually went with them. I think we went through the new highway barn as well, because it was brand new.
Mhm.
And I think they went through that,
Okay.
but it was brand
But it wasn't
new.
built out.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't occupied.
It was occupied.
It was occupied. Okay.
Yeah, I
So it
think
was built
so,
in like
but I can't
2018. So
I
you
can't find it.
probably got LED lighting in there. I would think in 2018.
I haven't been in there in a while.
I'll have to look
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
online.
Were you able to see what the square footage was approximately?
I couldn't find it.
That's okay. If you,
I'll get it to you.
yeah,
I'll get it to you.
I'm just curious about how big it is. Yeah.
3 bays, probably.
It was, they had
It's
They
probably
had
about
built it, they had the plans,
Mhm.
but then the price came in well over,
Mhm.
so they had to shorten it, make it smaller, and that's why they still had stuff at the old highway barn.
Gotcha.
So to ballpark it, you have a office for for Fred.
There's
the
a
DP
small office
highway.
area. Annually, that's where I hold the
Yep.
rabies clinic.
And you've got community, like a conference room.
Mm.
You have workspace, and then you have the bay,
Okay,
which
yeah.
is
Yeah.
for everything associated with DPW,
Right.
right? Their storage, they've got it upstairs.
Yep.
So it's a very much lofted space.
Gotcha.
And we
Okay.
can ask Charlie to
Yeah.
have them check it out, right?
All right, I think we've successfully made it through a lot in our agenda. Any further topics before we call it a night?
Just thank you for coming.
Of course.
Yes.
Glad to
My
hear.
pleasure.
Thank you.
I can't believe
And
it's been 3
Thank you.
months already.
Well, we've
Alright.
been talking
Go.
in the interim, so.
Yes, true.
So, Kristen, anything?
No.
All right, so our next meeting is scheduled again for the 4th of March, currently 5:30. And when we do the quarterly things, I'm more than willing to do this at 4:30. I know it's 6 now and we kept you a long time, but hopefully we can get you in and out.
Yeah, 4:30 would be better.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we can figure out for Q2, like when
Yeah.
works, because it doesn't have, yeah, it can be. like-
Yeah, and you're going to be going out for maternity, so we'll work around.
I found what I was looking for was B2Q that did the walk through here and the highway barn.
Oh,
Oh, interesting.
wow. I didn't even know we had that.
So maybe they were the pecs that were used
Huh.
when you became a green community.
Maybe.
perhaps.
That was BT before Tim. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and entertain a motion to close the meeting.
So
Second.
moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Meeting is